Soon you will understand everything yourself. I was about 4 years old when a foreign theater came to our city with their The Nutcracker ballet performance. Posters were placed all over the city, and ballerinas dressed in snow-white tutus looked like princesses in the pictures. I really wanted to attend ballet classes. Every day, when my mother picked me up from kindergarten, we were walking with her past the theater, and I used to look attentively at those colorful posters for a long time. Of course, my mother noticed my interest and bought 2 tickets for us. On the day when I first saw the ballet performance, my life changed forever. I fell in love with ballet and dancing. From that day on, I could spend hours turning around in front of the mirror, trying to repeat fouettes and attitudes, and asking my mother to gather my hair and make a flock on the top of my head. I even put on a leotard with a white skirt to look like real ballerinas. Mom was looking at my efforts with a smile and tenderness. But for some reason, Dad did not share her joy. He didn't like that I was dancing. When he saw my childish theatrics, he started shouting that dancing was not something that a good girl should engage in. He also said that it is vulgarity, and all ballerinas dance half-naked. Mom tried to calm him down and said that I was still a little girl and dancing was just a game for me. She also mentioned that my hobby did not necessarily mean that I would become a ballerina. After such talks, my dad cooled down for a while. But after a few days, he got angry again because of my dances in front of the mirror. And the older I became, the more this annoyed him. When I started school, we had a classical dance club, and I literally begged my mom to let me join it. At first, my mom didn't want this. She was afraid that Dad would be mad at us. But in the end, she agreed, with a condition that it would be our secret, and we would not tell anything to Dad. Oh, how happy I was. From the very first lesson, our coach said that I was doing really well. She also mentioned that I had a talent and the necessary potential for achieving success. I literally rushed to dance classes. My happiness lasted for 6 months, until Dad came to pick me up from school. On that day, he messed up something in the schedule and came for me much earlier than necessary, just when I was having a dance class. Our teacher did not know anything about the secret that my mom and I had, so she showed my dad the way to the hall where the class took place. Oh, how angry he was. With his shouting, he scared everybody, including me, other children, and the coach. As always, he said that dancing is a very disgusting and vulgar activity for a woman, and that his daughter would never become a venal dancer. The coach tried to reassure him. She told him that I had talent, but he did not want to hear anything about it. In the evening, there was a huge scandal at home, and I had to promise that I would never attend dancing classes again. I really suffered and missed my classes. It was as if some irresistible force made me engage in dancing, and I started to do it again, but this time at home, in my room, when my dad was absent. Despite my dad's fears, I was a good girl and did not want to break my promise not to attend the dancing club again. But I didn't say a word about stopping to dance at home, which means that I didn't break my word. Time passed, and I was still hiding the fact that I was doing ballet, as if I was a criminal who committed a terrible felony. But I never stopped dreaming about the stage and devoted all my free time to training and dancing, when my dad was not home, of course. Mom saw what I was doing, but pretended that she did not know anything. That was how we lived day after day, year after year. Over time, dancing was not enough for me anymore, and I became interested in the history of ballet. I read all the books about ballet and dancing that were available in the library. I was reading them at night under a blanket with a flashlight. Or, well, glued a new cover on a book about dancing and pretended that it was a literature textbook. I was hoping that over time, my dad's heart would soften at least to some extent, and he would allow me to do what I loved. I could not imagine myself becoming anything else but a dancer in the future. But I hoped in vain. My father remained adamant. When he saw dancing on TV, he immediately switched the channel and said that all the dancers were fallen women. While studying the history of ballet, I read a lot about female ballerinas, Dad was wrong. Among them, there were a lot of decent women. For example, Marie Verrer, the former ballerina of our theater. She was born and raised in a very poor family in a small village, and she did not have the opportunity to do ballet at school, which was almost like in my case, although my family is not poor and we live in the city. Marie also trained at home until one day when she turned 14 and the director of a touring theater noticed her talent. He invited her to study in our city, and later, Marie was able to build an incredible career, becoming one of the most outstanding dancers of her time in our theater. To be honest, then she disappeared somewhere, and I could not find any information about her further life. But this was no longer important. Oh, I just wished to be like Marie, and also become a famous ballerina. After all, her example shows that nothing is impossible. Once I was home alone. As usual, I practiced ballet in my room when I heard a doorbell ringing. I opened the door and saw the very Marie Verrer standing on the doorstep. Honestly, I thought that I was having hallucinations and even pinched myself, but I wasn't imagining things. Marie was standing in front of me. Of course, she was very old, but I would have recognized her in any case. She felt very embarrassed and somehow hesitantly asked if Frederick lived here. I replied that this was my father, but he was not at home at the moment. Your father? Oh, that's great, and I'm his mother, she said, and touched my cheek, smiling tenderly. His who? This was a hallucination for sure. I began to shake my head, but a hallucination, or rather Marie, did not disappear. And then my father showed up at the doorway. He turned red and started shouting while telling Marie to get out of our house. I couldn't understand anything. Marie left without saying a word, and Dad invited me to the living room to talk. It turned out that my dad hated ballerinas and dancers because his mother was a dancer in a local ballet theater. Marie gave birth to him at the height of her career. She was not married and apparently was very afraid of shame. At that time, it was improper to give birth to children out of wedlock. Apart from that, a child could ruin her career, and she was at the peak of her fame. In short, Marie had given my dad to the orphanage and decided to forget about his existence. My dad had a very difficult childhood. In the orphanage, the older children mocked him. There were rumors that he was the son of a celebrity, and this just further incited hatred among other kids. My dad believed that his mother exchanged him for money and fame. That's why he called all the dancers venal. But now Marie was old, sick, and lonely. She repented of her act and dreamed of finding a family. Mom and I began to beg my father to meet with her and talk. At first, he didn't want to hear about it, but then he said that he would do it for me. I remember the day when Marie first came to our house. She turned out to be very modest and smart. It was very interesting to listen to her stories about ballet and stage. The only problem was that Dad seemed to shun her at first. He often said that she was there only because of his daughter. That is, I had asked about it. However, step by step, their communication began to improve. And who would have thought that 6 months later, Dad himself would suggest Marie move into our house. What's more, he allowed me and Marie to train together. I got the best and most famous ballet mentor in the world. That is such a blessing. Now I knew exactly from whom I inherited such a love of dancing. We've been training together with Marie, or rather with my grandma, for 12 hours, and soon my efforts were noticed at my school. Then I was invited to perform at a city concert. I was really anxious, but when I saw Mom, Dad, and my grandma holding hands in the hall, my fear completely disappeared, and my performance was just brilliant. Now Dad does not interfere with my ballet classes at all. I wish Marie had found us earlier so that I would not have to witness this horrible dad's hatred for dancing. But the most important thing is that now we are all together, and this is forever. In the future, I will definitely become